So today, every product that we have in our kitty has a brand manager who is responsible for the P&L and who is responsible for the procurement price, who is responsible for the sales volumes, the projections, the COGS, the factory setup, anything and everything basically which comes under this. Of course, the brand building thing, right, which has come to us now and which we realize the importance of. It took us literally around 2 to 3 years to realize how important brand building is. Of course, it took us a lot of beating from your side to, keep hammering that this is important, this is important. We don't believe in perfect a thing before we launch it, whether it's a product, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's a product packaging, whether it's anything. So what we believe really is, we, at least both me and Abhishek, we are not obsessed with so-called, we will only get this perfect and then we will launch it, this packaging, etc. We don't function like that.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Brick by Brick. It's been a while since we did the last episode, but promise that we will be a lot more regular this year. So very excited to have Akash with us, co-founder and CEO of Farmly, which is today probably India's largest new age healthy snacking brand. The business is, we've been fortunate to partner with them in the last 4 years, and it's also, in our experience, the fastest growing packaged food brand that we've partnered with. They've hit 400 crores in revenues under 4 years of launching the brand. The origin was actually a B2B business back when they started, but from there, launching the brand and scaling it this fast and now emerging as India's largest healthy snacking brand is a phenomenal feat. So congrats on that, Akash, and congrats on the recent fundraise as well. So very thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you, Ari. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Always pleased to be a part of any of the DSGCP events.
No, thank you so much. Let's start with the origin story, Akash. You studied engineering in IIT Delhi, and from there, what sparked your interest to get into the food and agri space, and that to a B2B business?
Sure. So I think it didn't even start with, why a food and beverage business, but the first question is why entrepreneurship. So I think that was the origin of that question really started when I was still at college. Across the 3 years of the college, then I was part of a couple of early age startups trying to build out something. I joined housing.com again and trying to understand how the startups are built. I was part of them with a year. I started one company back in 2015, which failed miserably. I was under a debt of 220 lakhs in the second year of my college, which I didn't know how to repay, right? And then, of course, I took some loan again. I repaid them. I worked there again for a period of around 1 year till 2017 mid. I was able to effectively pay off my debts, pay off my dues from the last company, and then I had certain reserves which I could potentially use to, till the part I could kind of build up this building, build up the current venture. Now, why specifically, this is space? Because I come from a rural background. I come from Bharatpur, Rajasthan, and I have my granddad, my granddad, my dad, they used to have a lot of mustard oil seed farms, and I have seen very closely how the entire thing functions, how the farming business works. And one story which is actually very close to my heart is, we used to sell typical mustard oil seeds at around 15-20 rupee a kg, and then my granddad, for the first time, he started a mustard oil processing unit. It was a very manual unit. There's this Koluka bell sort of a manual activity, and then they kind of process the seeds
We are
into
in
oil.
Ambition, so I understand a little bit of this.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, so because of that, I could understand that, from selling 15-20 rupee a kg seeds to selling 65-70 rupee a liter oil, we could add a lot of value by slightest processing and value addition in the food products. So that is something which kind of stuck to me, and that is something which I wanted to really do when we started off with this business. We didn't really have the idea in mind. We didn't, of course, set out by saying that we wanted to build a large snacking brand, or build a large dry fruits brand for that matter. But the idea was to be able to kind of get into certain supply chain of certain agri products where a large value addition could potentially be done, and we can add certain value in the lives of the farmers as well as the life of the consumers. With that mindset, really, we started off this business. Dry fruits and nuts just happened to be a part of, or happened to be a category which kind of, captured our interest. So we were in fact in the initial 1 year, we were doing everything. We were doing staples, we were doing rice, we were doing pulses, we were doing oil. We used to do a lot of things. But then over a bit of time, we realized that we need to focus ourselves into one category, and even within multiple categories that existed within staples, dry fruits and nuts was a category which was growing very rapidly, and it had very large vacant space. The thesis with which we had started, which is the processing value addition which could potentially happen, that was the largest in dry fruits. So, technically speaking, for the guests, right? So, for example, raisins, it is first known as grapes, right? Then there's a solution, it is dried, then it is again the green raisins are formed, then the branches are removed, then color sorting happens, then stones are removed. So there are at least 5 to 6 processing layers before even a basic product like raisin really kind of reaches us. So the value addition that could potentially be brought in the supply chain was large, and henceforth we kind of chose to be in the dry fruits and nuts category. And then of course rest is history. And the business of course pivoted from there.
And yeah, tell us more about that, Akash. So you decided to zero in on dry fruits and nuts in the B2B part, and from there, how did that thought process evolve to launch a brand?
So it was a journey. It's a long journey, but I'll try to
Yeah.
position it in as small words as possible. But so when we started so the first part is we were delivering anything and everything in the staples category to some of the horecas, which were kind of, which we used to supply to back then. Then we basically spoke to those horecas. We kind of captured those hotels and restaurants which had dry fruits and nuts as large category of their business. So we began supplying very few hotels, restaurants, caterers, but very specifically large volumes of dry fruits and nuts. Now, at this point of time, we were still procuring these dry fruits and nuts from the local wholesalers who used to sit in the Delhi large wholesale mandi called Khari Bavli, right? So from there, we basically felt that, we maybe kind of want to start going deeper into certain product categories, because we were not able to fulfill the quality criteria which most of these people have. And there used to be frequent problems in terms of quality, etc. So there we went to the roots of some of these dry fruits and nuts. The first product that we went into the roots of was, for example, makhana, right, which is one of our, of course, flagship products today. So there we tried to tie up with certain processors. We asked them if they can full-fledgedly work with us. Of course, they said no, we didn't have volumes, we didn't have anything. So we said, okay, no, you give us certain volumes of that which is coming out of your plant, but we need this specific quality because our customer base is basically requiring good premium products. Somehow we convinced them. Out of 100 suppliers we met, one supplier we were able to convince. I still remember this is 2018, okay, we went to at least 10 different very large makhana wholesalers in this Forbesganj and this Katihar market, which is in Bihar, right? 99 of those people basically, really asked us to leave their space, speaking, of course, very vehemently and asking, दो लड़के आ गए हैं नई उम्र के, क्या करोगे आप, हमें सिखाओगे यहाँ पे मखाना इतने टाइम से हो रहा है. And both me and Abhishek, we were kind of very, of course, sad that, nobody is effectively giving us those makhanas. But then, of course, we were able to convince one person. We took certain qualities from there. Then, over a period of time, we realized that even that was not working. We need to have our own manufacturing sites, because whenever the peak season arrives, this one person or two people effectively, refuse to give us the material because it's a supply constrained market. The good supplies are effectively not available. So this was a third pivot. Then we started from from one stop solution to QC controlled trading to our own manufacturing. And at that point of time, all of us who used to be in the core team, of course, me and Abhishek, we spread out across to different sites. For almonds, there was a different site. For cashews, there was a different site. For makhanas, there was a different site. Raisins, there was a different site. And we started our own manufacturing units. From there, once we were able to establish these manufacturing sites and there was a consistent supply of quality which was coming in, then we realized that, now in order to really command the premium, because in the B2B space, nobody is really giving us any premium for the kind of quality we are supplying in. Even if somebody else comes in and sells 0.5% cheaper, there is no really defensibility in the business, because, customers will switch. So there was a lot of pressure on the margins, which is why we felt that, in order to command larger and long-term sustainable premiums, we will really need to get to the last consumer. And he is the person who we need to really educate in terms of what is it that we are kind kind of bringing it to them? What is the change we have brought in the supply chain? And henceforth, effectively build out a consumer brand. That was the first thought which we had in 2020, just before the COVID had hit. Then, of course, during the COVID journey, we launched the Farmley name for the first time in 2020. Before that, our company was actually called Technify Biz, right? So 2020, we launched that brand. Over the COVID, we developed the packaging. 2021 effectively is the first time we launched our packaging, and then we of course launched the basic dry fruits and nuts in the first year, and then we started doing certain value addition. We launched certain other value added nuts and dry fruits, and then over a period of time, we realized that in this space we can effectively be a much larger play and not just limit ourselves to the basic play of dry fruits and nuts. And that's how the concept of being a snacking player kind of emerged.
Right. Yeah. And that's also when, we first invested when launched the brand. And in our experience, Akash, we met a lot of founders and including founders in our own portfolio that, pivoted from being a B2B company to a B2C business. And 9 out of 10 are not able to pull that off, because it's a very different DNA thought process running these two businesses.
Right.
So what would you attribute your success to on, like successfully pulling off that pivot from just being a B2B operation to a consumer brand business?
See, I think one is the agility of us as founders. I think one of the key things which is required, and I still remember the story. So when we were pivoting from B2B to B2C business, right, we had a lot of thought, we had a lot of confusion whether we should do this, whether we should not do this. B2B, of course, had its own challenges, but since we had been doing that business, there was a lot of thought that maybe, it is the right time. And then at that point of time, there were also a lot of companies which were getting funded in B2B space. So there was, for example, this infra dot market, there was off business, there were a lot of companies which were getting decently funded. So we thought ki maybe, we just need to be consistent, because see, there's always this dilemma in mind, right? Whether you need to be consistent and keep doing that thing, or whether you need to pivot. So there was a lot of dilemma in our minds also. But then I think there was this intuitive feeling that this is something which is going to get very, very worsened off as the time progresses. There's a lot of competition which is going to come in, and fundamentally there is no large moat that we have as a B2B business that can effectively be sustained. And we had tried a lot of technology layers on the top of B2B business that we are building. It was just not playing off. There was no large technology play either.
Mm.
So for us, it was really the sustenance game. We had to pivot to a B2C business, and we had a lot of supply chain already in the place, right? We had developed 5 manufacturing sites. A lot of our investment that we had raised in our seed round, which we had raised in 2019, it had actually gone in kind of investing and putting up these manufacturing sites. So we had to ensure that we kind of pivot, efficiently to the branded business. But I think when we were doing this, one thing was very clear, that both me and Abhishek, we had to, of course, try and understand and try and build our own capabilities and skill sets in terms of how the consumer brand book plays out. So we needed a good investor, and we needed a good, I think, mentor in this journey. And honestly, we have been fortunate, and I cannot say this enough, to, of course, have you guys at the right time. So like I said, 2021 is the time when we started with this branded pivot, right? So when you guys came in, you of course have helped us a lot in kind of establishing the basic fundamentals in terms of how the business is built. You also got a lot of good mentors during the journey. From the team side, I think the first thing that we hired was, of course, the marketing head, because we didn't have any marketing team in the company. And then we kind of also, of course, got certain other major functions onboarded. But the good part with us, Hari, I think, which really helped us, and this also probably resonates a lot with Virat's story, right, in terms of how he built Viva, which was primarily the first B2B business and then a consumer brand, is that whatever business we had built till 2021, which was in the B2B side, and the supply chain that we had built, none of that was actually going to get replaced. That business, that supply chain, that manpower, that team, everything was going to remain intact. What we had to build was incrementally over and above what we had built for the B2B business, which is for the branded side. So this marketing schema of things, or probably the other things, right? So we learned those things incrementally. Of course, it took us a long time, but we tried to hire the right talent, and all those things happened. And also, I think we were at the right time at the right place. So when we were doing this, the snacking space and the dry fruits and nuts space was kind of exploding. Primarily, of course, one part was because of the COVID kind of coming in, and then people shifting to the packaged food business. The second was also because there was generally a lot of millennials who were getting into the consumption space, and because of this, the overall consumption story was kind of getting stronger. So because of this, we were able to kind of pull it off. So I think it was a mix of hiring at the right time, being there at the right time at the right place, and I think our 5 years of work basically putting off in the supply chain resilience that we had effectively built, because this is an industry which is supply constrained. So basically that kind of came to a lot of utility for us.
But in terms of, I don't know how much you remember about the B2B days now, but top three differences in the way you ran the business, first as a B2B company and B2C company. What were the big sort of tweaks or fundamental changes that you had to make?
See, when we were running B2B business, we had only two sales manpower. With those two sales manpower, we used to do a business volume of 35 CR a month,
Hmm.
right? And now, of course, we have a team, we have a sales team of more than 200 people, and we are still, kind of doing those numbers. So one fundamental thing which changed for us was that sales and marketing as a function kind of came stronger. We had to build that out for building out the distribution, etc. So that is one. And secondly, I think B2B business fundamentally, in at least our set of B2B business, I'm not talking about the SaaS businesses, I'm talking about product-led B2B businesses, right? In product-led B2B businesses, either of the three things have to function. Either your scale has to be super high so that anybody else just falls short of the scale that you are at, because of which their pricing that they can get from their vendors or from their suppliers is effectively not as good as you can get. The second is the credit game. So you are basically able to give a lot of credit, the right sort of credit in the market, and henceforth there's a lot of stickiness in the business that is being built, because now the customers are effectively, the SMEs are effectively dependent upon you, because you are giving them the credit. And third is the quality, and the quality game can only be effective, which we have realized over a period of time, in categories which are very niche in nature, right? So for example, the reason we were still able to get up to these 35-40 CR of volumes at effectively around 5-6% gross margin back then was because these categories were very niche back then. Specifically categories like makhana, raisins, right? They were still very nascent, still evolving, not a lot of suppliers being there. So today, the same categories, if somebody comes up and tries to open up a B2B business, they will probably bleed in this market, because a lot of competition has come and they're no longer niche categories. There's no dearth of B2B players. In B2C business, I would say, of course, the brand building thing, right, which has come to us now and which we realize the importance of. It took us literally around 2 to 3 years to realize how important brand building is. Of course, it took us a lot of beating from your side to keep hammering that this is important, this is important. But apart from that, it took us a longer time to grasp that and effectively work towards that. Secondly, I think the distribution play, right? So the distribution play here, we could have continued building the e-commerce and quick commerce business in very efficient, lean ways, etc. But the capability to build a large distribution and henceforth build a large moat, that is very important when it comes to the B2C business. And third, of course, is I think the creative element to this entire thesis. So whether that creative element is on the packaging, whether that creative element is on the social media, the kind of influencers we use, or the kind of campaigns we make, in terms of how we think of the brand architecture. So today we have multiple brand architectures in place. So today we have multiple brands in place within our mother brand. So a lot of things that we think about, a lot of creative ideas basically come into play. I think these are the key things. B2B is more about execution, fast execution, and efficiency. B2C is more about creativity, longevity, and I think brand building. These are the key differences.
No, perfect. Let's switch gears, Akash. Now, I want to talk about, the go-to market in the B2C journey. And, in my experience, your family has been one of the best businesses in terms of dominating channels, right? I still remember initially you took on Flipkart and really dominated market share there. And the moment, you got wind of QCom, how that took off, you again entered the channel early and went all in and dominated that channel. For the audience, you may not know, in my view, I think Farmley is probably the largest insurgent brand in quick com channels. So what does it take for a new brand to dominate channels the way you did?
See, our strategy has been very simple. So starting from Flipkart, when we were the largest DFN player, when nobody else had even thought about getting into Flipkart grocery, and we used to do up to I think 10 to 12 CR a month at back 2022, 2023, right? Is because we really work very closely with channels in identifying what their problems is, right? So when we got into Flipkart, their problem was that basic products like almonds, cashews, raisins, walnuts, etc., basically the plain dry fruits, nobody was able to consistently supply to them across the country in a good way, wherein they can, of course, good packaging, etc., good quality, but they didn't have any national player at that point of time. So we basically just helped them solve that problem. We worked very closely with them. We identified the products that they wanted us to develop. And I think for a very good amount of time, we were working very closely with them to just plug those gaps. And henceforth, we got the first mover advantage. We were able to very quickly establish ourselves. And what happens, of course, in any of this play is once you're able to establish your presence on certain e-commerce, quick commerce, or even the general trade market, is you start getting good sort of repeat, the customer review, and all of those things get happen, which are very difficult to move over a period of time. So even now, we continue to be dominant across Flipkart. So we might not really be selling the plain dry fruits and nuts as much as we used to sell them back in 2023, but we still dominate that category on that e-commerce play because of that first mover advantage and because of that rapport and relationships which we had built. Similarly, in the quick commerce business, we were one of the first movers, right? So one, of course, is the capability to identify what is the problem which lies with these sort of e-commerce, quick commerce players or the modern trade players for that matter. And the second thing is the capability to make the products as per their design. And third thing is the supply chain strength to be able to supply them consistently, solving their problem of no stockouts across the country. So if you ask me, it was a service business till then. Because of course, the supply chain is given, right? We already had the supply chain, good quality, and all those things, but we didn't really have the brand strength. So Farmley, as it stands now, was not back in 2022, right? So because of the right services, because of the just capability to be right there everywhere across the time when the customer needed us, is what really created the mode for us to be established there. And I think that continues to build. Of course, that mode continues to build, and over and above that, like I said, of course, the reviews and then the relationships strengthen. The sheer volumes that you are at, the marketing costs, etc., start to make much more sense to you than to any other new player that would want to enter today. So then those things, of course, start making incremental value add for you on these platforms.
No, I think that's a very powerful lesson, working very closely with channels and treating them almost like customers and servicing them really well. But let me double click on how did you sort of set up the organization to do it? Because a lot of what you said, a lot of founders aspire to do, but not many are able to pull that off. But not just one channel. I remember, as I said, both in Flipkart and on each one of the QCom channels, you dominate them, in terms of market share. So what does it take from an org design standpoint internally? Do you have like single, an individual responsible for every channel? How do you think about it?
See, our org thought process also has evolved over the past 8 years, and it has evolved multiple times. I can tell you how it stands today, but how it stands.
But it'll be useful to also take people through the journey.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So let me do that, because how it stands today really is not how probably 2 years back it would have worked, right?
Yeah.
So, when we were setting up the manufacturing sites, I'll start from 2018
Hmm.
19 when we were setting up the manufacturing sites. We needed very deep understanding of how the procurement happens, where the procurement happens from, relationship building with the farmers, with the suppliers, with the importers, capability to build factories, etc. So that happened when all of us, like some of the core team members, we were stationed at some of these sites, right? So for example, I don't know if you know this, I was actually stationed out of Bihar, Purnia, for almost a year in 2020, in 2019, 2020.
Okay.
So that this is when we were starting off this Bihara site. Abhishek was positioned in Mangalore, which is our cashew
Hmm.
processing site. So we were like different. Samarth was positioned in Sangli for raisins, and some of our core team members were stationed like this. So that time it was that there are factories which are handling individual products, and every PNL, the entire PNL basically comes under these sort of factory heads or the category heads, whatever you call it. And then of course there were certain common functions like finance and sales. Then once we shifted from this business and we started focusing on the e-commerce business and the brand kind of came into play, then we continued to operate on a model where the sales team was still handling the PNL. Sales team was still kind of getting business from different e-commerce and quick commerce sites, but the supply chain, which whatever had been built, was getting forecasts and projections from downwards, and the procurement team was kind of functioning very separately, where the procurement team gives inputs to the supply chain team basically on the basis of projections kind of works and gives the volumes to the sales team, right? This could function well for us till a certain time, but as soon as we started getting our brands started getting wider and more known. So for example, today Date Bites, Flavored Makhanas, all these brands that we have, and we want to establish them as individual separate brands, we realize that the P&L ownership now does not lie with the salespeople at all, because the pricing at which anything has to operate is effectively driven by the company strategy, by the brand strategy. So, and the COGS, the cost at which this is being procured, is again something not which is not in the hands of the sales team, right? So neither the selling price is in the hands of the sales team, neither the cost of the goods sold is in the hands of the sales team. So we realize that the P&L ownership is effectively a myth for the sales guy to effectively own. So that is when we kind of brought in the brand managers. So today, every product that we have in our kitty has a brand manager who is responsible for the P&L and who is responsible for the procurement price, who is responsible for the sales volumes, the projections, the COGS, the factory setup, anything and everything basically which comes under this. Of course, again, like both me and Abhishek, we had to play very pivotal roles as brand managers ourselves when this was happening.
Mhm.
But once this was able to happen, when this transition kind of took place, now the sales team basically has to function more from a technical standpoint. The GT team, of course, has to make a good distribution. The quick commerce team has to focus on performance, or focus on brand building. The marketing has to focus on brand building. So all those things are effectively with them, while the P&L ownership, the procurement ownership comes with these brand managers. So that has really, worked well for us, and that is something which is working well for us now. And because of this, we envision that, rather than being spread across too thin, which is, let's say, currently maybe around 50, 60 products portfolios, kind of contribute to 60, 70% of our business. This is something which is very rapidly changing for us. So for example, some of our hero products which contributed to less than 2, 3% of the sales today stand at 20, 30% of the sales in a matter of less than a year. And this is something which will continue to happen for some of our hero brands. So I think that's how we think of the org strategy, in terms of course, both me and Abhishek, we take individual reportings from different functions. Abhishek looks at the back end, I look at the front end, and that is also again how we have divided role between the two of us. But that's broadly about it.
Okay. And for the audience, to put things in perspective, Farmly does much more than 200 crores of revenue just on quick com itself. And I mentioned this, Akash, because there are a lot of founders now trying to crack the quick com channel. If there are like top 2, 3 things you would sort of list as the key success factors in winning on QCom, what would those be?
So see, quick commerce, I think, so first of course is the capability to identify the right product at the right price. So we have, for example, managed and developed a lot of products in, again, very close coordination with the quick commerce category managers in terms of what the pricing of that product should be, what should our GTM strategy be for that product, and very close collaborations also when it comes to the brand building, or when it comes to some of the marketing campaigns. So I think that is one. The second is, it really depends. So the better margins, the more margins you have, the more you can basically spend on some of the performance marketing, right? So identify the closest key markers that we can potentially use to be able to kind of, get our product visible. So we had one product, for example, which was Panchmeva, right? It is a mixed dry fruit product. So we could not we didn't know how to kind of, even attract customers. But then we identified that, somebody who is buying dry fruits is somebody who can potentially be also, sampled this product. And once this product gets introduced, this product, of course, then there's a repeat buy. So the first and foremost is to get the customer to buy the product for the first time. And once that happens, I think the quick commerce algo, of course, also functions in a way that the repeat of the product, of course, becomes much, much easier over a period of time. So what is the closest proxy that you can use to get the customer to get your product for the first time? There is, for us, at least sampling has worked as a very, very good strategy. And, I really believe that this is a strategy which can work for a lot of customers. So, for a lot of brands, if you're able to do either free sampling or maybe, a low price point sampling, or if you can develop a product which is priced at a very small price point, which is probably a replica of the bigger product, and that bigger product is also basically there at the quick commerce. So that thing effectively works very well on the quick commerce channels. And then of course, there are a lot of specific performance marketing strategies that can really be developed specific to products.
No, perfect. And we will be doing a quick com playbook session soon for the portfolio as well. But those are very useful. Thanks, Akash. And from our lens, if there's one thing that I've observed with Farmly, I think it's just the execution speed and speed of decision making. I would definitely rate you amongst the top founders on that front. So what drives that? It'll be useful to just sort of take the audience through your decision making process. How are you able to make those decisions so quickly? How do you go about it?
See, of course, there's no right or wrong answer to this. And we have, of course, made a lot of wrong decisions as we have reached here, right? But I think
But it'll be useful to understand your philosophy. I'm sure there have been mistakes, but what's your philosophy when it comes to decision making and getting things done?
Sure. So no, so how we function see here is that we don't believe in perfecting a thing before we launch it. whether it's a product, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's a product packaging, whether it's anything. So what we believe really is, and we are not, we, at least both me and Abhishek, we are not obsessed with so-called, we will only get this perfect and then we will launch it, this packaging, etc. We don't function like that. So once we have a very optimal product or packaging or a campaign in mind, we do that. We work very closely to identify the right levers which can tell us whether that is working correctly or not. Because, and this is again, this probably goes back to the DNA of the founders. We are able to do this because intrinsically we are very agile. As soon as we know that something is not working, for us to shift gears and completely 360-degree also change it is effectively not, we have done that, right? So we have changed from B2B to B2C, from a dry fruits and nuts business to a snacking business. So a lot of organization restructuring, etc. So that is something which is very intrinsic to us. So I think we do that, we pilot, we learn, we change the thing, and then we relaunch. So, and in this entire process, a lot of conviction comes, I think, from the fact that our team also speaks very similarly to the same DNA, right? So our team is also of the view that they would want to do the things, and rather than keep on ideating, keep on thinking whether it is the right thing, or get consultants on board or whatever XYZ. So the team is also basically built in a similar fashion, just like us. Secondly, I think, and this is very personal to me, but I think I am a person who believes in intuition much, much more than anything else. If you really ask me, 99% of my decision making, and I don't think you know this, I think 99% of my decision making will be intuitive till now. There have been so many times where probably people have said completely opposite to what we have done. When quick commerce was launching up, at that point of time, we committed to a lot of spends. When we are shifting from B2B to B2C, when we were doing our own manufacturing. Today also, till 2 years back, actually, not today, people used to say that, as brand, you don't need to own manufacturing. Why do you do your own manufacturing? But we still kind of continue to do it because it felt right. And I am not saying it is right today. Even 1 year down the line, maybe, things change for us, but it feels right today. And that is why we basically continue to do that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't know you were so gut driven. Okay, very interesting. And so in terms of like, what about the bigger decisions? How much time do you give yourself to make potentially bigger decisions, irreversible decisions, etc.? Do you approach them differently, or is it the same?
No, it's slightly different. So the bigger decisions, we give a lot of time. So it operates in a similar fashion. So what we do is, it is always hard to make bigger decisions without getting a lot of conviction. So we don't really make the bigger decisions instantly. What we do is we again break them down into smaller decisions. We take some small decision. Again, it might perform, it might not perform. But incremental small decisions, which we have realized over a period of time, is they help us bring that conviction to be able to take that larger decision. So in a lot of times, so for example, again, taking this shift of the entire organization from where sales used to, let's say, lead the PNL to a brand leading the PNL, right? At that point of time, what we did is we did this with one small brand, which was not that material to us. Then we did this with one sales function. Then we did this with another brand. So, and it was falling in place. Then we took this larger decision. Okay, let's kind of restructure the organization to fit it into this piece. So I think we give it time, but we still ensure that we're moving ahead. We are still making decisions. We're not sitting on decisions.
No, that's a very useful tip, breaking it down into smaller parts and then moving fast on them. You spoke about how the team also operates with the same speed, and now that's also not been easy for founders, ensuring that the team also has that bias for action and, is not just boiling the ocean. Are there any tips? How do you sort of solve for that at the hiring stage itself?
See, we were able to solve for it when we were 4 or 5 years younger than what we are today, right? I don't know if what I'm going to tell you is going to be relevant for a company which is already 6, 7 years or 5 years old, right? But I think when you're young, the capability to take people, and maybe even when you're 4, 5 years old, the capability to take people who are not necessarily really from the same business, but who are young, who are eager to learn, and who can effectively, communicate, brainstorm, again, the agility piece that they basically bring onto the table. And once they remain in the system, and of course incentivized enough, they have the right ESOPs, etc. Once they remain in the system for a longer period of time, they become almost like a founding team members to you. And I think this is what we have been able to, touchwood, achieve. A lot of, I think 90% of our core team is greater than 5 years old in the organization. So I think that is because of that, what has happened is, a lot of things that we're able to do have sustained. A lot of cultural things that we wanted to build have sustained in the organization, and a lot of knowledge has remained in the system rather than going out of the system. But I think, yes, rather than hiring from specific industries or people who have expertise in those supply chain on those particular categories, rather than that developing in-house talent, working very closely with them and giving them right amount of time, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years before, of course, then they develop into full-fledged, experts in their own domains.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is you solve more for attitude and hunger to learn, and that's work. And related to that is what you just mentioned, Akash, is you've also had this core that's been together for long.
Right.
And how have you managed to pull that off? Because hiring the right people is a task, and retaining them even harder, right? So any inputs for the founders?
See, and I'm not sure, I'm sure a lot of our core team members would be listening to this if they would agree to we saying what we are saying. But I think we give them a lot of freedom to make choices.
Mhm.
So we are not very nosy when it comes to the decision making. So once the overall broader strategy is aligned, we don't really get into the daily execution. We are not finicky when it comes to making choices. So there are people, and it works differently for different founders, but there are people who, let's say, are very specific in terms of how the design should go out, how the campaign should go out, how the sales strategy should be, or things like that. I think we are more finicky about the sort of outcomes that come out, as long as whatever flexibility in terms of how they operate is being used. So giving, and of course, with it comes trust, right? Trusting the outcomes, whether they're good or bad. So in these 5 years of journey, of course, with all the with all the team members, right, there have been a lot of wrong decisions, a lot of decisions that have probably wiped out a lot of amount money from the company. But the showing that trust at those difficult times, I think, is one of the key things that keeps the team together. I think trust and ownership and the ability to make them work as per their styles.
No, perfect. That trust and that psychological safety goes a long way. Let's focus on product development and, just your product strategy next, Akash. So talk us through the hero product. It's like the first product everyone thinks of when they think of Farmly is the date bites, which has become a iconic product. So what was the insight behind it? And, tell us more about that.
So I'll tell you the honest story of Dead Bites today. Okay. So what happened is, we at certain point, if you remember, just before you guys had come in, where we had these stores that we had physical stores that we had started to put
Yeah,
up.
your pet project.
Yes. So there, there was a lot of, because in stores you need a lot of SKUs for them to be profitable. So we launched a series of products. I think in 2 months' time, we launched almost 70, 80 products, right? And at that point of time, the decision was very clear that, we have to tie up with different contract manufacturers and we have to just get as many products as possible. The packaging was very simple. It was a brown packet and there was a label that we used to stick on the top of it with product name and the brand. That's it. So there was no branded packaging also. So when we were doing this, out of these 70, 80 products, there were 2, 3 products which, and we didn't, of course, have the retail stores were not success. They eventually shut down and all those things happened. But with whatever limited experience, so which is why I tell team that even the retail stores were not, they were a success to us, because that is what has brought Date Bites to us, right? So out of the 70, 80 products that we had, Date Bites was one product which had very high repeat. So customers used to come, the children used to come and ask for that specific product. And very good customer love. So when those stores kind of shut down, then we basically pull out some of these products which are very high repeats, etc., and high customer love, and then we develop this product. First, we developed this product on our website, and till then this product was still being manufactured from an outsider, so we still didn't have the manufacturing strength of the product till then. So we started the product on website, and again, till then the packaging was also very basic. Then we, again, on the website also, similar trend continued. There was a lot of repeat, a lot of customer love was pouring in, a lot of people used to mention us on social media that this product is very good, and all those things used to happen. So then we revamped the packaging, we took the premiumization route. We thought that let this be the first product in our portfolio, because till then, again, the basic products were still dry fruits and nuts, right? So it's a product that we are going to build like a premium product. So we built a very premium packaging, and then we brought the product in-house. Till then it was contract manufacturer who was making it for us. So we solved for the supply chain, and it is one of the most difficult supply chains to solve for date bites. We solved for the supply chains and scale and everything. And then over a period of time, of course, the product now is where it is. We kind of now focus upon building this product as one of our hero products, and probably potentially reaching a 500,000 CR journey independently very soon. That's how we kind of look at this product. And
That's amazing. In fact, I see a question from the audience. The question is on what you think is the next date bite for Farmly. Two questions actually. They want to know what is the next hero product in your view, and also, if you can just talk through how you are building Farmly, the brand.
Sure. So in terms of hero product, so one hero product, of course, which we have is Farmley Makhana Munchies. Makhana Munchies is a product which is made out of makhana flour. It is roasted in olive oil, much healthier version, etc. And it is priced at a price point which can go directly to the offline retailers who typically sell the snacking products like Lay's, etc. So it's a much healthier version on the shelves at the price point of 20 rupees. That's really one product on which we are very bullish. We are also launching Choco Almond Date, which is effectively something which you have also tasted. So there's this very indulgent first product which we are launching, and all these products, of course, are clean label. So there's zero olive, there's zero palm oil, there's zero frying, there's zero added sugar. Even Choco Almond Date has zero added sugar. So that's the sort of research and development in the NPD which we have been able to develop. So these are at least two products which we are very bullish about. In terms of Farmley architecture, you asked, right?
The brand, if you can talk people through how you're building the brand Farmly.
Sure. So I think so again, so how we look at it is in the initial stages, it is the product cross brand that people buy, and it is not just the brand salience that we need to build. So the strategy that we have taken is we don't really spend much or kind of market much solely about what Farmly is, because now we don't have we are and we used to do that when we were just focusing on the dry fruits and nuts. So one of our ads with Rahul Dravid, if you look at it, there were 50 different products at on his back. But then the positioning for us was that we are a dry fruits and nuts player. When we're a snacking player today, how we believe is that it is effectively be going to work like an umbrella, like your umbrella of brands, right? So there are going to be different brands, and the purpose of every brand has to be very clear in the minds of the consumers, and they of course all lie within the Farmly umbrella. So Date Bites, when we promote, or this Munchies when we promote, we talk about the specific use cases of these products, and we talk about how this slight differential in terms of the positioning also. So every product has its own campaign. Every product, if you look at the back of it, it has its own tagline, right? So all those things are there, and then on the back of it, we keep building those products in the specific territories. What we're able to observe is that there's a good rub off also that these campaigns for this specific sub brands have on the mother brand. So in any area, let's say we're able to do good campaigns for Date Bites, we observe that Farmly salience has also grown effectively in those geographies. So that is what has been working for us till now, and this is across the channels, across the geographies, etc. But going forward, because this can effectively only be done for one product at a time, we basically want to do this, let's say, one financial year for one product, second financial year for some other product, and which is why the expectation of building large revenue from some independent brands also comes into play. So if we are doing so much work on just one brand, the idea is to be able to scale it up to 500,000 shares out of revenues.
Okay. Next I want to focus on, you've always had the odds stacked up against you in terms of just views that investors had on the category, right? And will be useful to understand your perspective and how had that conviction to see through it and get the business to where it is today. The first one that comes to mind is, the usual skepticism around supermarket labels, private labels becoming a big threat to Farmly. What if a Tata or a ITC launches, dry fruits and nuts based products? How, will you survive, etc. So how did you sort of rationalize those threats as you built the business?
See, Tata and ITC did launch their own private labels for dry fruits and nuts, and they're still there. So I think one is, of course, we did change our strategy. So that was, I think, generally speaking, that was one large threat in terms of, if had we only stuck to dry fruits and nuts, it would have been difficult to maintain margins and kind of maintain our brand defensibility. The idea was to spread into a larger scheme of things, into larger snacking player, rather than just being focused on dry fruits and nuts. I think in terms of private labels, that has been a question which has been there for a very, very long period of time. But private label is something which will always be there. The customers will still want to have their own choices. If the platform does not have choices, the customer will effectively not come on that platform. So it is more than us. It is the platforms that still have to keep multiple players on their shelves, right? And also because the private labels are present across multiple categories, the sort of customer feedback loop which is there in other, with branded players and with focus like ours is effectively not there with the private labels. If you look at the packaging also, it is very, standard packaging, kind of copy pasted across multiple categories. So I think the kind of customer love, feedback, all those things, the options that the customer need, the premiumization, all those things come effectively with the brand. So the brands are are there to stay. They have been there. The Amazon has their, the Solimo, Vedika, etc. for a very long period of time, more than a decade now, and still continue to be there. So all those things will happen. From a point of view in terms of what the investors would ask, and maybe the other players kind of launching their own dry fruits and nuts space. Like I said, now we are in a larger snacking play, and when it comes to snacking, the private labels are not that strong, but it is not that the private labels cannot come. So very recently, for example, Swiggy launched its own private label in the snacking space. So they have own snacking, their namkeens, etc., which they have in their own private labels now. Big Basket has this brand called Tasties, which has been in existence for a long period of time, where they sell their own snacking products. So I think they will again be there, but then again, the sort of brand pull that we are able to generate in this period of time, the consistency of the product, the uniqueness of the product, which combines with the resilient supply chain and the strong supply chain that we have been able to build. I think those are the things then effectively which come into play. So while maybe somebody else can also do date bites, maybe they can do as good in quality as us, but can they really do worth of 500 CR date bites? And that becomes the question, right? Because then it needs to be coupled up with the sort of ATL campaigns, it needs to be coupled up with the sort of supply chain resilience that we have been able to build. So all those things, when they combine together, is I think what differentiates us when it comes to any of these private label players, and that will continue to happen as long as there is a very unique product proposition on offer.
Oh, fair. And the other major question was on the lack of any successful precedents in the category. There were more case studies of brands that didn't do well as opposed to doing well, and question marks on whether the gross margin will ever be viable to build a fundamentally strong business. So how did you sort of think through that and again, drive the business to where it is today successfully?
See, I think we always had that picture very clear in mind that this is what we want to achieve. So when we were in DFN, we had these different products that we wanted
DFN is
to.
dry fruits and nuts. You're
Yeah,
going
different
back to
dry
your
fruits and
B2B
nuts.
days.
Sorry, my bad. So when we
Okay.
had dry fruits and nuts, we had very clear picture that these are the n number of products that we are going to launch. They are going to be high margin products, and now we have to work in order to drive sales volume for those products so that the overall margin of the basically business improves. And I think honestly, this is the only strategy which we had in mind, and this is something which we still have in mind. So even today, we have to drive the sales of our higher margin products so that the overall portfolio gross margins basically improve. And we were convinced because we were able to see it happening. So we have been on a increasing gross margin trend for a very long period of time now. And I think honestly, that is what gave us the confidence that yes, this can potentially happen, and irrespective of whatever has happened in the market or whatever the failure cases, etc., we believe that the snacking business as it is today on the aisles of a supermarket or on the, let's say, on the laddies of a 30, etc., that is not going to remain the way it is today. So the brands that are there are effectively going to change. Whether it's us or someone else is a different question, but there has to be someone who is going to change it, because that is not how the millennials are going to consume or the Gen Zs are going to consume.
And what do you think is Farmley's biggest defensibility, Akash? Is it the back end or is it the culture of executing at speed? How do you think about the defensibilities of the business?
The defensibilities of the business at different stages of our company have been different. So when we were pivoting, that time the defensibility was that we already have a strong supply chain in place. When we were 2022, our defensibility was that we have large volumes from some of the e-commerce players. Today, I think the defensibility is a combination of our supply chain resilience that we have been able to build, the culture of agility and of innovation that we have been able to build, and last but not the least, the scale and the pace at which things operate within the organization that we have been able to build. So we really ensure that if we are doing something, we are doing it very fast, so that we are
Yeah.
basically much ahead of any of the competition that comes into there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, the speed of execution and that culture of agility, I completely, agree with that. So the last section, I just wanted to focus more on, slightly philosophical stuff. So why don't we start with, before, I ask the audience questions, why don't we start with a founder that's inspired you, India, global, any founder that you really look up to, and what are the specific things you look up to in that person?
See, when we were in the B2B days, one of our mentors, Mr. Narayan sir, right, who was the founder of Power to SME, he was someone who was a very close mentor. He guided us to opening these factories, etc. till 2021. We used to really look up to him. Still, we look up to him, in fact. But then, post that, when we were building a consumer brand, then, there were different different companies that we used to look forward to and which we really kind of, where we used to speak to the founders, etc. Epigamia, for example, was really one brand that we used to look up to. So, things like that. So I think our mentors and the people we look up to have changed over a period of time. Today, the brands that we look up to are very different. Some of the premium brands, and we speak to those people very often in terms of how to build out those brands. So I think that journey really changes, but there has to be one mentor at any point of time in the startup journey is what I really firmly believe in, who you can openly speak to and kind of seek feedback from.
Okay.
You, of
And
course, remain a mentor for
no,
us.
thank you for that. And one last question from my end, Akash, before I ask the audience questions. For people who are listening in, if they want to emulate Akash and Farmly and build that culture of, be it executing at speed or being agile, pivoting, etc., what would your advice be? What are habits, personality traits that help you get there? Maybe cycling to office is one.
Yes. So I have been cycling to office for the past 6 years now. That has, of course, in
And
the
in
morning,
peak Delhi winter, for everyone
Delhi
listening.
winter, Delhi summers does not matter. 365 days, or whenever I come to office, I try and come by cycle. I think second is the capability to really, trust the intuitions and declutter the noise around. So, a lot of times, a lot of information, knowledge is available, but at the end of the day, one should really, I think, do what feels right, and the capability to declutter from that noise and listen to that right one voice coming from inside is a very key task. So I would personally suggest a lot of, mind management techniques, meditation, etc. really also helps. Some bit of morning ritual that you can continue to do for a very long period of time, that has helped me. That has helped me recover from a lot of personal things also. I think that is one thing which is very important. Of course, I think I've said this before also, but the never give up attitude. So I think we believe that, at least I believe that, whenever there are two paths or two, one decision to be made from two different paths, there's no right decision or wrong decision. You basically have to take one decision and then stick and ensure that basically turns out to be the right decision. And we have really done that. So we have thought hard enough probably before taking a decision, but once that has been taken, we have tried to ensure that was the right decision that was taken.
Yeah, I think that's sort of, I think Ratan Tata said the same thing. He makes decisions and then makes them right.
Yeah, yeah.
So great. Let me now take the audience questions, Akash. The next one is, it says Akash himself is from a tier 3 city. And the question is, do you think makhana should be made available in a 10 rupee packet, taking on Lay's and Kurkure?
No, I of course think that I would want that to happen, but the
Sounds
unit
good.
economics has to effectively make sense for that to be there. But we are really trying hard. So maybe not makhana directly, but maybe some product which is innovatively made out of makhana. For example, like this, we have makhana munchies, right? So
Mhm.
this has a lot of makhana powder. So the nutrition is similar, but it is priced slightly lower. So I think if we are able to crack some good innovation and if the price supports, we would really love to have at least some makhana product or makhana made product at this price point.
Great. And I think it's the last question. And yeah, it's the usual question on packaged food. Given the differences in palate, taste preferences in different parts of India, they say it changes every 100 kilometers. How do you factor in these taste preferences in your product development?
See, there's a lot of technicalities that I can answer with. We, of course, have a lot of product development tastings that keep happening at different sites. We are there in different supermarkets. Now, in every supermarket we are there, we basically have these product samplings that we do. So we have them in Tamil Nadu also, we have them in Srinagar also, we have them in Bihar also, we have them in Rajasthan also. In the supermarkets we do these product samplings, and then we ask them to, and this is blind sampling. So we would have our products, we would have someone else's product, we would ask them to rate our product. If there are different flavors, we would ask them which is a better flavor, and basis upon that we come up with, let's say, what flavor is working best, etc. But I think, having said that, in packaged food, what we genuinely believe is that any good product or any good brand, any good universal brand that you have to effectively make, that will have a unanimous vote across. So for example, your Lays, your green Lays, your red Lays, etc., across the country you will have very similar feedback, right? Everybody would love it. So any large brand, if you're looking to make like 500,000, 2,000, 3,000 CR sort of brand, it will not have very large negative comments, or it will probably have much more, people who are promoting your product rather than being passive or detractors.
Mhm.
It is difficult to find such product, but such products exist.
Okay. And Kalyani's question is your thoughts on manufacturing in-house versus outsourced. And she also wants to know how much of your portfolio is manufactured in-house versus outsourced. I think more the question is how should one think about, which products to do in-house versus outsourced?
See, I think when you are still at a stage where you're not sure about the product, whether you're going to continue with the product or it has reached a good product market fit, till that time it is good to outsource the product and not invest in any machinery or any capex, etc. But once that has been established, to prevent the recipe from going out, to ensure that nobody else is going to love your product like you do.
Hmm.
So to ensure that that dedication, that consistency is there, whatever automation is required is there, you will have to effectively bring that product in house at the right time when that PMF has been reached, is what we believe.
Got it. And the last question, he says he's from a tier three town and raising capital has been difficult, especially coming from a smaller town. What is your advice for him?
So I think, of course, so coming from a small town does not matter. So like I said, I also come from a small town. The capability to kind of, story tell about what you are basically trying to build is very important. So it is not about what you're building today. It is not about your sales today, whether it's 1 CR, whether it's 1 lakh, Hollywood kind of also appreciate it does not matter. So it is really about the story that you are trying to sell, the brand that you are trying to make, and the brand story effectively, right? If you're able to tell that right, and if of course there exists a right or a large enough market, I don't think today reaching out to any of the investors, angel, I think what I would suggest is get the right mentor probably at the right time. So if you have the right mentor who can guide you on small things in the journey forward, it will be really, really helpful in making connections to the right investors, of course, but also in terms of pivoting you and ensuring that you have the right direction.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Kaushal, our view is, those days are gone. There's a lot of capital. So, as Akash said, it's the same rules for everyone. Please have the faith and do write to us as well. We invest super early, so we'll be happy to schedule a call. So, I think that is the last question. Akash, this was fun. I learned many things that I didn't know. So, thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Hari, for inviting me, and it was fun to have chat with you.
Super. Thanks everyone for joining. See
Thank you,
you in the
everyone.
next one. Bye.
Bye.